Alright, Shamu. We're back. We're going to do part 2 of Crowley's writings on the left-hand path. Again, I want to say, I am not taking a stance on Crowley here. I am not saying that Crowley is a wonderful man. I am not saying Crowley is a terrible man. I'm not saying Crowley is a leader in his... I am saying that the historicity of the text bear out that Crowley is our next step when we are coming down the left-hand path. Now, previously, I had read a part from The Voice and the Vision, in which he talks about how you become a black brother of the left-hand path. And that is that refusal to cross the abyss, the choice that lies opposite of the babe of the abyss. Now we're going to move a little forward, and we're going to look at Crowley's Magic Without Tears, where he has an entire chapter dedicated to his thoughts on the left-hand path and the black brothers therein. I've pulled a couple quote mines here, just because I'm not going to read a whole chapter. But you can find what I am reading from within the Magic Without Tears. I believe I'm pulling this from chapter 10. Mark well this first distinction. The black magician or sorcerer is hardly even a distant cousin of the black brother. The difference between a sneak thief and a Hitler is not too bad an analogy. The sorcerer may be, indeed he usually is, a thwarted, disappointed man whose aims are perfectly natural. Often enough, his real trouble is ignorance, and by the time he has become fairly hot stuff as a black magician, he has learned that he is getting nowhere, and finds himself, despite himself, on the true path of the wise. Invoking Zeus to swell the power of Pan, the prayer discomfits the demented man. Lust lies as still as love. Thereupon, he casts away his warlock apparatus like a good boy, finds the AA, and lives happily ever after. So what Crowley is discussing here is the idea of the sorcerer, the man who is disappointed with the world. He's been thwarted in life. He's not going where he's wanting, so he uses his little bits of dabbling in magic for personal gain and goes no further, eventually finding out that magic requires and is part of spiritual growth, and he needs to tie himself to that, or he will not actually get ahead in life. This was the black magician to Crowley, a man who was disappointed, a tiny, frail man who only did this for pure power, and that was it. Crowley then goes on to contrast this, or rather to show how that pipeline leads to a black brother. So the left-hand path, let us start at the beginning. You remember my saying that only two operations were possible in nature, addition and subtraction. Let us apply this to magical progress. What happens when the aspirant invokes Diana or calls upon Lilith? He increases the sum of his experiences in these particular ways. Sometimes he has a liaison experience, which links two main lines of thought, and so is worth dozens of isolated gains. Now, if there is any difference at all between the white and the black adept in similar case, it is that the one, working by love under will, achieves a marriage with the new idea, while the other, merely grabbing, adds a concubine to his harem of slaves. The about-to-be black brother constantly restricts himself. He is satisfied with a very limited ideal. He is afraid of losing his individuality, reminds one of the Nordic twaddle about race population. Interesting line there. Crowley, not a fan of the, whites being bred out dialogue. Regardless, have you seen the sand roses of the Sahara? Such is the violence of the Khamsin that it whips grains of sand together, presses them, finally builds them into great blocks, big enough and solid enough to be used for walls in the oasis. And beautiful, for all that they are not real rocks. Leave them in peace, with no possible interference. What happens? I brought some home and put them in safety as curiosities and as useful psychometrical texts. Alas, time is enough. Go to the drawer which held them. Nothing remains but little piles of dust. I know that is the precise term in the vision and the voice to describe the great white brother or the babe of the abyss. But to him, this means victory. To the left-hander, it would mean defeat, ruin, devastating, irredeemable, final. It is exactly that which he most dreads, and it is that to which he must in the end come, because there is no compensating element in the idea of the structure. So Crowley sits here and detaches the left-hand path from this Indian ritual taxonomy that we have. And what he does, seeing that, hey, we maybe were not approaching this right. I think what you meant to write upon is this kind of a person. And so it starts to refit it as like a moral initiatic verdict within the higher orders of the Lima. So the adept who refuses ego annihilation at the abyss becomes a black brother. Fittingly, this still does tie with a lot of what we discussed in Vamachara, of not destruction for the sake of power, but destruction of ego for the divine. Crowley was not a fan of these people. I have one more quote I would like to pull. Tomorrow we will be looking, or next video whenever I get it out, we'll be looking at a simultaneous movement that was occurring at this time while Crowley was writing this. But here is one more quote I want to pull from Crowley on his ideas of the left-hand path. For Choronzon is, as it were, the shell or excrement of these three paths, and therefore is his head raised unto Da'ath, and therefore have the Black Brotherhood declared him to be the child of wisdom and understanding, who is but the bastard of the swastika. And this is that which is written in the Holy Kabbalah concerning the whirlpool and Leviathan and the great stone. They keep themselves from the kisses of my mother Babylon, and in their lonely fortresses they pray to the false moon. We covered this part of binding them to an oath and killing themselves with poison, yet their own poison do they perish. Behold, it entereth not into the heart, nor into the mind of man to conceive this matter. For the sickness of the body is death, and the sickness of the heart is despair, and the sickness of the mind is madness. But in the outermost abyss is sickness of the aspiration, and sickness of the will, and sickness of the essence of all. And there is neither word nor thought wherein the image of this image is reflected. And who passeth in the uttermost abyss, we're not going to have time for this. We will. Except he be of that understandeth, holdeth out his hands, and boweth his neck unto the chains of Choronzon. And as a devil he walketh about the earth, immortal, and he blasteth the flowers of the earth, and he corrupteth the fresh air, and he maketh poisonous the water, and the fire that is the friend of man, and the pledge of his aspiration, seeing that it mounteth ever upward. So, Crowley is our next step in the left-hand path, and was not a fan of them. We will go further into what was happening with Westgoth in the next video. I am at 15 seconds. Timed this pretty well. Shalmu.